If you know Jesus Christ, you have a testimony. It doesn't matter if you were born in a church or if God set you free from drugs or any other kind of addiction. If you know Him, you have a story to tell. You can tell others of how you met Him, what He did in your life. So today in this workshop, we're going to talk about what your testimony is. We're going to talk about different kinds of testimonies that you could give. And at the end, I'll close with some practical advice, some things that we, in our time in the street throughout the years, have learned about how your testimony can be more effective and how you can reach people in a better way. So the testimony, like I said, is your story. It talks about what God did in your life. It talks about what you experienced, how He touched you, how He spoke to you, how He transformed your life, why you are different now than you were before. Charles Spurgeon makes it very clear. He says, when you are like a witness, you're supposed to talk about what you saw, what you lived. You're given a report of what happened. Nobody expects of you to be a theologian, to be an expert, to be someone that knows all the technical terms, that can justify everything. The only thing that is expected to you is to give a truthful account of what happened. You don't have to worry about people questioning the existence of God, questioning creation or the goodness of Him. The only thing that you talk about is what He did in your life, where you were, what He said, and what happened afterwards. I know what I felt. I know what I lived through when He saved me. Nobody can question that, take that away from me. I don't have to argue this with anyone because I know what He did. And that's my testimony. Every testimony is unique, is different. Everybody has their own story with God. So don't feel bad if yours doesn't sound as spectacular as others might, because it is spectacular. Jesus saved you from your sin. He saved you from death, from the punishment of God, to make you His beloved, to adopt you into the family of God. That's what you're talking about. And that is a reason to celebrate. That's the reason to lift your voice and exalt Him for what He did. Why is it important that you give your testimony? First, your testimony can reach people in a very different way than personal evangelism would. You remember the questions that we go through in Kilometer Zero. Do you think you're going to heaven or not? Why do you think God would let you in? How will you be on Judgment Day, guilty or innocent? All those are great questions, but there are some situations when I have seen that those questions don't get anywhere, that people are not interested to answer. People see themselves good enough. And in one specific situation that we were talking to girls, and my friend started talking about her experience with God, how she was in her bedroom and God broke in and changed her life forever. And as she talked about it, as she talked about what she lived through, what her emotions were, what her thoughts were, and how God turned everything around, these girls started crying. So if you don't reach their hearts in personal evangelism, your story might. So it's important that you sit down and prepare it. It's important that you think about, what is it actually that Jesus did for me? Another super important thing about your testimony is that it will help you to worship God in a much different way. It will help you to exalt Him in a much more intense way. Imagine David in Psalm 103. He says, "Bless God, O my soul, and don't forget any of His benefits. Don't forget how He forgave you, how He got you out of the pit, how He healed you, how He changed you, how He's shown mercy to you." If you take your personal testimony into your times of worship and prayer, it will change everything. If you start to remember who He is and how you know what He did, how He showed Himself to you, that will lead you in a much deeper way of worshiping Him and praising Him. And finally, Revelations 12:11 says that our testimony is an armor in our spiritual warfare, in our spiritual fight as we go through this life. The blood of Jesus, the word of our testimony, and because we despise death, we don't fear death. I mean, imagine you're going through a hardship and you start to remember what God did through you and in you. It will help you to hold on. It will help you to believe that He is kind, that He's faithful, that He is good, that He will help you to get through. There are different kinds of testimonies that we find in the Bible. One of the most prevalent ones is the one of before and after. Look at Paul. He gives us an exact account of what his life was before he met Jesus, where he was when it happened, what Jesus said and what he said. He tells us about what happened afterwards. And in the book of Acts, he doesn't do it just once. He does it various times. And every time he does it, it seems like he is standing before someone that's accusing him, and he's justifying why he's doing what he's actually doing. Paul doesn't exalt his life as a sinner before he knew Jesus, but he exalts Jesus. He talks about the kindness and the mercy of Jesus when he showed himself to Paul. So that's a very, very important example for us how we can learn to give a testimony that has an emphasis on before and after. Another kind of testimony you could give is a healing, how Jesus touched you and healed you. Also there in John 9, we have an account of a person that was born blind, but had an encounter with Jesus, was healed, and then stands before others talking about what happened. It's interesting, you know, this man is being accused and people tell him that Jesus is a liar, he's a sinner, he's not the one that he pretends to be. But the man doesn't enter in any of that. The only thing he says is, I don't know who the man is, but I know once I was blind and now I can see. So that's a great way of giving your testimony, you know. You don't have to be a theologian. You don't have to justify anything. Just tell them of what Jesus did. And the last way is to tell the people why you love Jesus, what He did for you that no one else could have done. Look at the lady that was caught up in an act of adultery. You know, they found her, dragged her to Jesus, trying to find out what He would say. She receives forgiveness. He literally saves her life. What do you think would she give as a testimony? How do you think she would talk about Jesus in that moment when she experienced forgiveness, when she came to know Him, when she came to know His mercies and the goodness of God? That's what this kind of testimony is about. You just tell them why you're so grateful for what Jesus has done in your life. When you give your testimony, there's a few things that you should be keeping in mind, a few things that you should consider as you prepare it inclusively. One is the time. At Kilometer Zero, we set a 2-minute standard. Why just 2 minutes? First, everybody can speak 2 minutes. Everybody can talk at least 2 minutes about what God has done in their lives. It's a short time. Another thing that it really helps us to get to the main point, to not get lost in details, but to explain in a very simple and clear way of what God did. And thirdly, we're in the street. We're not in the church. Nobody's obligated to listen to us. People walk by, they're busy, they're doing their thing, and if you are able to just focus what He did in 2 minutes and explain it to them, they're willing to give you those 2 minutes. They're willing to listen because they feel honored in the way that you're using their time. 2 minutes is a good time frame to give your testimony. Watch out for your language. I know at church we many times use words that sound great, but if you really dig deep and want to figure out what they mean, many times even in the church people don't know what they're actually saying. let's say, to live in the world. What does that mean? I lived in the world and did what the world was. Well, you're not on the moon. You're still on planet Earth. So when people listen to you that have never gone to church, that have never heard the term the world in the sense of living in the pleasures of giving into the things that that you feel like doing, being in rebellion against God, committing immoralities and living in lies and stealing and coveting, if they don't know that you're referring to that as living in the world, they won't understand your testimony. They think you're weird because they see you and they think, this guy hasn't figured out that Madrid, for example, is part of the world. So explain yourself, give definitions. Don't just use generic terms. Don't assume people understand what you're saying just because you understand what you're saying. Another example, would be accept Jesus. I receive Jesus. What does that mean? What are you saying? You're saying, I put my faith in Christ. I embrace Him. I trust Him. I cling to Him. I follow Him. I invited Him to come into my life. There's a million ways to say the same thing. So look for ways that would be easy to understand for people that don't have a church context, because that's the kind of people we want to reach. That's the kind of people that we want to listen to the gospel. But if they don't understand us, they will take off and leave. So as you speak, try to become one of them. You don't have to use swear words, but make it simple. When you give your testimony, be authentic. Talk about what you felt, what you went through. Be honest. You don't have to get naked before people and talk about every thing that you did or that happened, but be genuine in what you say, and people will listen to you. People know when something's real and when something is just a play. So I encourage you, show emotions, show, smile when you talk about Jesus and the cross. Use your gestures and your mimic to underline what Jesus did for you. The structure of your testimony is important. Start with a short introduction. The introduction will help you to connect with the people. It will help you to raise their interest in what you're about to say. Try to connect with them. I mean, it's interesting how Paul does it. So there's the whole city of Jerusalem that's enraged against him. What does he do? He starts to speak in Hebrew. He starts to refer to them as his brothers and fathers, telling them that he knows where they're coming from, that he had the same education that some of them had. In our case, I sometimes say, I'm an immigrant here in Madrid, but I love Spain. That helps both the immigrants and the Spaniards to connect with what I'm saying. But then shoot for the main part of your testimony, which is what happened. Talk about where you were when Jesus touched your life. Talk about how He spoke to you, how He answered your prayer. I mean, you could even paraphrase your prayer that you prayed to show people that there is no such thing as a magic word or a magic place. Help people to understand that God can touch us anywhere we are. Talk to them about what Jesus spoke to you. Talk to the cross. Talk to them about the cross. And then you finish with a short exhortation, urging them to do the same, encouraging them to speak to Jesus, that He can do what He did in your life, in their life as well. Be positive. Offer prayer. Tell them that if they are interested in talking more, they can do it and that you're available for them. And you will see giving a testimony is something that will pump you up every time you do it. You might be nervous at first, but once you're done, you're full of gratitude and thankfulness for what Jesus did for you.
I love Jesus because He rescued me from a life of sin. I was living completely for myself. I was really my own God. I was full of vanity and fear and anger, but He changed me completely. He gave me a new heart. He set me free. I love Jesus because through his death and resurrection, the wall that separated God and I no longer is there. God adopted me into his family. He treats me like I'm his own daughter. He's an unfailing father. I love Jesus because he took my place. The perfect man was treated as the worst of criminals. He drank the cup of the wrath of God that I deserved. He took my place. I love Jesus because I cried out to him when I was 14 years old, and he heard my cry. I cried out to him in a simple way. I just said, Jesus, I can't do it on my own anymore. I can't be a good person. I can't be good enough. Forgive me of my sin. Help me to be more like you. I love you. And he did it. He forgave me. So I just want to encourage you to do the same thing. Call out to God.